Did you think this was inevitable, this outcome, Ben?
I did, and to be brutal, the electoral maths, like normally a high-profile minister helps you win a seat. Incumbency and profile, I think, are more important in modern politics, actually. The quality of the candidate and the barrage of social media and advertising and disinformation, the quality of the profile of the candidate more important than ever, and incumbency more important than ever for lots of reasons. But those 3 seats in Western Australia are now hugely important for the whole election outcome. And I think, strangely, him going probably makes it slightly better for the coalition. So I think those, as much as you think it's about the individual, the raw political calculations come to bear on candidates and the political pressure comes on them to resign. So I think it was an inevitability for the political fortunes of the government. Notwithstanding that, I think I hear polling on both sides shows the coalition in trouble in those 3 seats. And those 3 seats probably are essential if Labor's going to have any chance of victory. They've got to pick up at least 2 of them, if not 3 of them, because the pickings are slim. Tasmania might net out. It's difficult in South Australia. There's only 1 or 2 possible gains for Labor in Victoria. I think Queensland's overstated for Labor. I think they're hard to win any seats there. It'll come down to New South Wales. But I think those 3 seats in Western Australia and New South Wales, I think, will be the election will be decided. So I think in that sense he had to go. One last thing. I think the thing that has really tarnished him at the end is this blind trust. That's a terrible infection in democracy.
Well, that was the thing that saw him knocked out of cabinet, wasn't it? That was the
That was the final straw, yeah. Like, in some ways, it's always the cover-up, isn't it, And that's stained him, but stained our democracy until we sort that out. That can't be allowed to go on, that sort of system.
You've got a contrast, such a stark contrast between 2 individuals, probably similar age. I think Porter and Hunt, different career trajectories. But Hunt, in many ways, I know he's copped his criticism for the vaccine rollout, and I'm sure Ben will have a critique on him tearing up the carbon price at the time, and others will be critical of him on that. But his efforts during the pandemic have been enormous, and I think he leaves, by most objective assessments, on a high.
Don't forget as well, he's had to oversee...
He hasn't confirmed it yet.
Yeah.
We're expecting that.
Yeah, look, don't forget he oversees aged care as well after... the Royal Commission, the implementation of a whole range of policies that are going to come in and are really necessary after, struggles in that area and obviously cost rises. We've talked about this quite a bit, and you can be critical about individual things and contracts that didn't come through, but everybody in the world, all countries had troubles in some way over COVID. Everyone was feeling their way in the dark. Australia, you have to say, we don't manufacture our own vaccines. We had to buy our vaccines. There were problems with the delivery of those vaccines. And for a period it went slower, and we gained at the end, and now we are amongst the highest vaccinated nations in the world, and we've had a loss of life. And that surely has to be the measure for Greg Hunt. He has done a sterling job in the end of protecting the lives of Australians, while the government has worked hard to protect the livelihoods of Australians. So in terms of where we are, in terms of safety, Greg Hunt has done an absolute tireless job. Now, I've seen Greg over the course of this, and the guy has been out on his feet often when you see him. I can't imagine how difficult this has been over the course, and the weight of responsibility over people's lives, over decisions you're making on advice.
Yeah.
When you're not a doctor, you're taking advice, you've got to make critical decisions.
2 years of this role in a pandemic must feel like 20.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, they're bigger than dog ears, aren't they? And clearly he's been at the front line of that. And it's strange to me that you can outlay a good narrative for the government in relatively less deaths than the rest of the world. We've got high vaccination rates. Well, we had a good economic response. It's strange to me, given all that, how far behind in the polls they are. They should be in front they've got that record to sell in a way, because there have been, I think it's because there have been so many stuff-ups. And I think probably the Prime Minister's character, the assault on his character has worked. I think that's probably why he's behind and he's been found wanting on that level. But I think Greg, I think history, of course, will judge those who repeal the carbon tax badly. I just think it will in the long term as you see climate change get bigger and bigger. But having said that, Greg was a fair negotiator. When I was doing a bit of behind-the-scenes work for Clive Palmer, we negotiated with Greg Hunt. I don't think he'd mind me saying a better direct action legislation that was passed. It resulted in the Climate Change Authority, Bernie Fraser was chairing at the time, saved. Sure. The Emissions Reduction Fund was improved. And Greg was an honest broker in that. And he also put in place there the emissions safeguard system, which is a potential future policy to reduce emissions. So I think he was a practical guy. He had leadership aspirations himself. He wanted to stand for deputy leader. Yep. And I think he definitely was a fair player in many of those negotiations.
Ben, thank you for that. I just want to get David's response out of this story. Andrew Clennell reporting this afternoon with me that your company receiving that contract without tender to build a case for private quarantine centres. How did your company get involved and what's your reaction to it?
Well, it's unremarkable really in some ways. It was a 2-month contract with Home Affairs to help facilitate and build an industry-run and industry-funded quarantine system. So there's discretion within Home Affairs budget to run it that way. Understood that was taken up. I think we acquitted ourselves quite well.
So you were never going to run the end product, that was for industry?
No, the industry is running it and industry wants to run it. Remember where this came from back in August, where people felt that quarantine was going to be necessary possibly for 2 years, maybe more. There was a backlog of visas that had been granted to students and skilled workers. There were only 3,000 people getting into Australia every week through hotel quarantine, so hotel quarantine was fatigued. And you've had the Shadow Treasurer on today talking about the deleterious effect on the economy of no one being able to do that, and the way that wages.
Scott Briggs and you are the Prime Minister's mates. That's
we were contacted to put in a proposal to Home Affairs because we had business connections that could bring together a range of businesses. Don't forget this either. There were probably 20 or 30 different proposals at Home Affairs at the time to run pilot schemes so industry could bring back its workers. And one of the aspects of the job was to bring that together to make sure there was a cohesive industry scheme. And this is the important point. This was going to be run and funded totally by industry. So that's done. That model is set up.
Did you discuss this with the PM as well?
No, this was done through Home Affairs.
Home Ministers.
It had nothing to do with government. It was to be run by business and funded by business.
David Gazzard, Ben Oquist, gentlemen, great to chat.
The bottom 20% get nothing. They're really unfair tax cuts.
People want to see much stronger action from the government when it comes to climate change.
It's no coincidence that we have a wages crisis in Australia.
Transitioning to net zero emissions, it doesn't seem like there's much room for gas.